Due to recent listener outrage, our opening music has been replaced. Just kidding. Let's rock. You are listening to Season 2, Episode 3 of Trad Talk Radio, the music episode. Enjoy.
And welcome to another fine episode of Trad Talk Radio.
Episode 3.
Episode 3.
We're off and running officially on podcast.
Oh, the men of the network have not managed to assassinate us yet.
We live for another day.
Yes.
We made our way back to the basement.
Oh, yeah.
It was it was elusive. It took some work on my part. I had to shake a couple of guys that were trailing my car, but I did make it here, I believe, unfollowed.
Now, men of the network, take note. This basement is well fortified. Sandbags, machine gun bunkers, loopholes we can shoot from. It's safe. You're not going to get in here.
Looks like something out of a Normandy movie, you know.
But,
yeah. So, hey, well, it's good to be back. We want to thank the greatest fans on the internet who have been wonderfully subscribing to the podcast, subscribing to the YouTube channel.
The greatest.
Yeah. Showing up very strong, representing, liking the Facebook page, following us. Just as an update for anyone who is not aware, obviously you know what platform you're listening to this show on, but we are officially available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube.
And YouTube. Awesome.
Not with video, but you can look at the little squiggly line thing going as we talk.
Yeah,
so,
that's fun.
Yeah,
that's
fun.
super fun.
Yeah. So I think coming into this new week, this new episode, interesting thing happened recently.
It was very interesting.
Very interesting.
I was very interested.
I didn't anticipate this, but we got some feedback. It wasn't. We got some feedback on the internet about our intro music.
Yes, and normally this is the time where we would launch into a full-scale roast. You know how we are, you guys.
I mean, a charitable roast.
Yeah, we get a little wild sometime with the roasting, but the point was brought up that we're using heavy metal-ish, hard rock music, and I didn't think there's anything wrong with that, but it did make me think a little bit, and I did a little bit of investigation to see, what kind of music is appropriate for a Catholic to be listening to.
Well, that's good. I think you did more investigating on it than I did apparently. So I don't know. Were you able to find anything out in your investigation?
Well, I don't know. It was mostly the ancients. Aristotle, the greatest of the heathen philosophers, actually had a lot of things to say about music.
See, I thought he liked metal, but that might have been Bill and Ted's Adventure I'm thinking about.
No, that was Plato.
Okay, all right.
Plato was the metalhead.
Okay.
Aristotle liked...
It's been a few years since I've seen that movie.
Yeah, he liked trap or shoegaze or whatever the kids are listening to.
I don't think I know that either.
The young student of Plato.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but basically, music can basically summon these emotional states within you.
Mm-hmm.
Like loud and clamorous war music it'll excite what's called the irascible appetite.
Okay.
And this is when you're agitated, you're kind of pumped up. This is like gym music. If you ever listen to heavy metal in the gym, think of the kind of aggression that you get from that. The irascible appetite is a term that St. Thomas Aquinas uses, and I'm not sure who figured it out first, like Aristotle or St. Thomas or both, but basically heavy rock music like that excites your irascible appetite, and that is not conducive to prayer. It is conducive to warlike deeds, going to the gym, punching people in the face, and that kind of thing. And I'm just struggling, trying to figure out whether that's appropriate in certain circumstances, or if you just need to avoid music like that altogether.
What it made me think of when you were talking about that just now is the was it New Zealand or Australia where those no, it's Tonga. There's a war dance kind of thing.
Oh, you're the haka.
Yeah, the haka.
Yeah.
And that's probably, I don't want to call
New Zealand.
That. Yeah, and I don't want to call that, music. I don't want to demean it by just saying it's some kind of music or dance, but it does have that rhythmic kind of vibe to it, and they do kind of work themselves up into a frenzy,
Yeah, it's like rap. It's atonal. It's like a musical.
Okay.
It's just chanting.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, the I think the comment that started it all in reference to the music, so I can get the feedback. Well, so what the listener said was, how can you be in a state of grace and support the rock music in your podcast? So how can you be in a state of grace and support the rock music in your podcast? That's kind of the feedback that we got.
Yeah, I read that comment, and initially I was like, oh, yeah. But then I was like, oh, wait, that's actually pretty valid. I mean, there might be something to that. So I did some investigation, and I haven't really gotten it figured out.
Yeah. No, I know. I came back. I think I didn't resist the temptation to come back maybe a little bit, a little bit smarmy. But I think at some point I told them, hey, the opening, both our music and our scripted introduction, although I don't know if it's really scripted, but our scripted introduction. Semi-scripted. Let our listeners know that the show isn't meant to be taken too seriously. The Catholic faith, absolutely. Our Lord and the Holy Mass, you bet. The two dudes hosting this show, nope.
So certainly there's an element of jocularity to our presentation. We're not playing this like hockey stadium rock music to get people thinking that they should be pumped up or anything. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah. Well, I even asked this person, can you imagine someone seeing or comment and thinking that a traditional and Orthodox Catholic can't open a podcast with drums and electric guitar? I mean, I just feel like it's
yeah.
My concern was that it just it's that kind of puritanical.
It does border on scrupulosity.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I do. Again, we're not talking about like we're opening with I don't know, Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne or some type of actual song or some type of band that has your history of a certain imagery or whatever. It's a rather kind of generic, heavy or hard rock.
Yeah,
intro.
Well, the tragedy with most of rock and roll is that it was founded by Satanists. I mean, Pastor Billy Bob was right. Like, rock and roll was satanic. You had, I forget the Rolling Stones guy. It was Keith Richards or the other one, Mick Jagger. But the guy did some kind of movie where he was a satanic like cult guy, and they had like just the most offensive imagery in this movie. But like all the guys in the '60s, there's actual books about this. I read a great book about this called "Turn Off Your Mind." It was written by the drummer from Blondie.
Okay, yeah.
So this guy's an occult scholar.
Okay.
He has done all sorts of investigation into the occult and things like that. And the thing that he came up with is that the 60s was just this like hotbed of devilry. Like everybody from Jim Morrison, from the Doors, the Beach Boys, they were hanging out with Charlie Manson.
Charlie Manson, yeah, at the beach. Yeah, Dennis Wilson. He had him at his house.
I got to tell you the story about Dennis Wilson and the Beach Boys and Charles Manson. I mean, I'll keep it clean because this is a family program.
Yeah.
But Dennis Wilson, the drummer for the Beach Boys, comes home one day and he sees his house full of people, just full of random people partying. And he goes up and Charles Manson walks out of this man's house barefoot and says like, "What's up, brother? You're late to the party." And Dennis is like, "Whoa, what is this? Like, who are you people? You can't be in my house." And then eventually Charles Manson just works his charisma magic on him and he starts partying with them. Eventually, they run him literally out of house and home. They take all of his gold, like, framed records from the wall and sell them. They, like, sell his car. He had a Rolls Royce, and they sell it.
My goodness.
And eventually, Dennis is living with his cousin. And Charles Manson wants to get a recording deal before people knew he was a psychopath murderer. And so Time Magazine actually named him Person of the Year or whatever.
Wow.
It was weird. And Charles Manson goes to Dennis Wilson at his cousin's house. And he finds the cousin, and he says, "Is Dennis home?" And the guy's like, "No, like, who are you?" And Charles Manson takes a 1911 out of his waistband, takes the magazine out, and with his thumb pushes the 45 off the top of the magazine and says, "That's for Dennis. You get in touch with him. You bring him back here." Because Charles Manson was trying to record. The Beach Boys actually played a song that he had written. It's called "Never Forget How Not to Love," or something like that. It was in their weird period.
Okay.
Yeah, but eventually Charles Manson, he had written the song like, with a bunch of weird psychopathic cult lyrics, and then the Beach Boys kind of rewrote it so that it was less scary and psychopathic, and they released it, and he was furious.
I'm just shocked that Charles would have had lyrics that were scary.
I know, right?
That's
I know.
Blown away by that idea.
Wow, what a digression. But I say all that to say that rock and roll started out bad. I don't think it's all bad, obviously.
Sure.
I listened to some of it, but after reading about that episode, listening to the Beach Boys, at least later Beach Boys, when they got weird, definitely kind of leaves a bad taste.
I think it was Mick Jagger too who was in that movie, and of course they had their song "Sympathy with the Devil."
Yeah.
Don McLean in American Pie, when he's talking about the devil or dancing on stage with a fire, and then he's talking about Altamont. And the whole,
really?
Yeah, there's a whole portion of American Pie where he's Don McLean is really kind of calling out the Rolling Stones.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, listen to it again. It's a whole history of rock and roll. American Pie is it's a whole kind of timeline of rock and roll with Bob Dylan and Elvis and the Beatles, and then it goes on to the Rolling Stones and and of course Buddy Holly and all that too in the beginning in the chorus.
Wow.
Yeah, so quite a digression, I guess. So Trad Talk Radio will not be talking about rock and roll or rock music very often, but the point being that I think would like if any of our listeners are kind of knowledgeable about what maybe is taught by the church on something like this. A lot of times the church doesn't really take a stance on certain things.
Yeah, sometimes they play rock music during Mass.
And I think Trad Talk listeners can all agree that during the liturgy is not the time to break out the rock music. And
I think we can all agree on that.
That's the one thing. We can definitely agree on that one. But I would be curious. I do know that think about Cat Stevens when he went Muslim.
Yeah. Yusuf Islam is his name now.
Yusuf Islam.
Don't dead name him, Brian. It's called dead naming.
Oh. No, you say Yusuf Islam and they're not going to know what you're talking about. But you say Cat Stevens, then you go. I was going to start singing. Oh baby, baby. Anyway.
I'm really sad you didn't, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not going to break into Cat Stevens. But the point was that he changed what he would perform and what instruments he would use, he said, per Islam, once he made that conversion.
I can respect that.
Yep.
The fact that he's willing to sacrifice his art and like what made him who he is for his religion. I think we need to see more of that on the Christian side.
Yep.
That would be cool.
Just want to make sure that we're kind of approaching it from a Catholic perspective and not a Pastor Billy Bob or a Yusuf Islam approach.
Yeah, definitely.
So we probably need to kind of just look into that more. And again, if we have any listeners that happen to have written their doctoral thesis on...
Yeah, I would actually love that. If we can get an informed opinion, not like, oh, you shouldn't listen to rock because it's bad and I don't like it. That's not an argument. I want to hear good, well-researched arguments either for or against rock and roll music. That would be awesome.
And then take it back to a 45-second intro into a show of with no lyrics, if that qualifies even as, you know what I mean? So it's like we're not telling folks to run out by Zeppelin's greatest hits or AC/DC. We just have a bit of an intro to our show.
Yeah, that stuff is openly satanic.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not going to sit around and listen to things that are overtly satanic, but maybe things are implicitly satanic and slipping past my radar and poisoning my spiritual life that I don't know about. So I'm open to correction on this. I would really like to hear somebody that knows what they're talking about talk about it.
Yeah, and again, our main reason for that music is because we really want people to understand that this is a different kind of show than what they're maybe used to. When you get a Trad Talk Radio, your first inclination or first, instinct, you think you're going to hear Gregorian chant, which we love, by the way. And
or some like G.K. Chesterton skiffle music, like the dudes in the waistcoats and the monocles.
Exactly, but instead you get something different. So that's the point behind it. But I guess enough of that. Enough about the intro music. You know what? The young woman who brought that up, however, I actually am grateful. So just a big thank you for actually putting that out there and even kind of challenging us on that.
Oh, yeah. We really appreciate challenges. We're cultivating a martial atmosphere, warlike in here. So if you got hate mail or anything you don't like, tell us, challenge us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, so I guess kind of getting officially into the show now. One of the things we wanted to talk about.
It's been 13 minutes. The show can finally start.
Yeah, let's get into the show now. Although I'm not going to, you mentioned about all of rock music in the 60s being into the occult and satanic.
Not all of it, obviously, but anything that the record companies had their slimy tentacles on was, they were tooling that stuff out for money.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, so some people you share kind of like these inconvenient truths with them, and they think you're putting on a with a tinfoil hat, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask you to go ahead and keep the tinfoil hat on.
Yes.
Because there's something we want to talk about. And I really want the listeners to kind of to think about this, and if they even want to look into it on their own, just out of curiosity, to see that we're not making this up. In the wake of Traditionis Custodes, so that was July 16th, I think, or 17th of 2021, last year.
Has it been that long?
It's been that long. We just hit it. Yeah, we hit its 1 year anniversary back in July.
It feels like only yesterday. we were hosting everybody from the indult masses at our local society chapel.
Well, yeah, well, exactly. So the Traditionis Custodes comes out a little over a year ago. Since then, I have noticed what really seems to be like and you can correct me if I'm using this wrong, but as I would understand the term, the military term, it seems like there's an anti-Society of St. Pius X psyops going on.
Yeah, psychological warfare. Pope Francis actually does this, as we discussed in season 1.
Yes, as we talked about with agreeing with Rome in the first season.
Yeah, the plane interviews. It's called maskirovka. It's a Russian psychological war technique.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Maskirovka.
Research it. Yeah.
All right. Well, so I'm noticing. It seems to me that there is an anti-society psyops that we're in the midst of right now.
Yes.
So, and I'm saying so too much.
Exactly right.
Exactly right. I said
exactly
that too
right.
much. Don't do that, because then everybody's going to count all the times I say that. We should put money in the too far jar every time I say
That's
exactly right.
not going too far. It's just saying exactly right. It's fine.
Okay, exactly right. The attack on the society, I guess that's one way of phrasing it, or the criticism of the society, or the argument against the society.
It is an attack. Let's not mince any words. It is an attack on the society,
and so that's been on since day one, right? They had a bullet. The minute you a bullseye on their back, the minute you come out and you say this seminary in Icon, Switzerland is for the traditional mass and traditional sacraments, and for carrying on with the formation of seminarians as it always had been.
The missile lock warning started to chirp.
Yes.
Once that happened, just deet, deet, deet.
Yeah. So I mean that was from the get go. That's going back to 45 years ago or 50 years ago. That's always been there. So we're not talking about this being a new thing in the life of the church with regards to the criticism. But an interesting thing is, just really in the last year, and in some cases maybe a little bit longer than that, is this shift. And I've noticed it in particular in a few different YouTube channels where all they do, now they're not claiming to be we're the anti-society YouTube channel. I mean, it's not even in their name, but all they discuss is all the things that's wrong with the society. It's the main effort, I think, right now is to discredit.
I'm sure they have a bunch of great videos discrediting other so-called schismatics. I'm sure they have videos against the Greek Orthodox, right, Brian?
Well, you know what? As a matter of fact, a couple of them do, but not. No.
There goes my joke.
No. But here's your point. No. But here's where you're right, though.
Yeah.
There may be a video or two. It's like saying after multiple episodes, well, Trad Talk talks about rock and roll music or heavy metal music. We talked about it for about 13 minutes on one episode out of seasons 1 and 2 combined. That's not talking about it. Well, so the Greek Orthodox are like our hard rock conversation, whereas the society would be more like our discussion of Pope Francis airplane interviews.
Oh yeah, right.
Something like that. So,
I got you.
Yeah, they take it to a whole different level, and so there's one particular channel, for example, that's been popping up. I guess YouTube must be part of this conspiracy because the algorithms they're nailing me with it. But this one particular channel, I was looking at it, and I guess they've been around since 2020. So they just came out after a few months into the pandemic. Maybe the pandemic had been going on for about 6 months. Well, what did people start doing like yourself when the pandemic hit and the church is closed?
Basically wasting my life watching meaningless TV shows.
No, I mean on Sunday when you wanted to go to the sacraments. What did you do on Sunday when you couldn't go to a parish church?
I turned on the TV and I set up a chair in front of the TV and I would kneel. And then when I got sick of that, sick of watching Mass on TV,
yes.
I heard that there was a renegade chapel in the area that was still offering the sacraments.
Yes.
I was very surprised, but, I put on a ski mask. I made sure I wasn't followed, and I went to this chapel. And I went in there, and nobody was wearing masks. Like, everybody was sitting shoulder to shoulder. It was like going back in time to pre-2020 or 2019 or whatever it was. And, that's what I started doing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And I think it's thankfully it's not a completely unique story, because you probably started noticing a lot of other people that were kind of working their way in there who were new to the chapel.
Yeah, eventually there was a lot of people that were new in there that started coming.
Yep. And it's only picked up steam with Traditionis Custodes.
Yeah.
And so there's one particular channel, which, by the way, recently had an episode where they more or less were asking, are we talking about the society too much, or are we being unfair? And I'm like, that's all you're talking about.
Yes, the answer is yes.
So it looks like there's about maybe roughly 30 episodes in the last couple of years where it doesn't directly address the society. And then there looks to be about almost 30 episodes where it does. And yet the show isn't supposedly about the society. So half of your content is why you cannot go to Society Chapel. Questions for Archbishop Lefebvre. Questions for the superior, why it is a sin to, that kind of...
I'm very sad to say, but Monsieur Lefebvre has passed away, so any questions for him will have to be directed to somebody else.
Correct. He's not gonna answer those, right?
Yeah.
So there are other channels I've noticed, and there are websites that have popped up too, just in the last couple of years, discussing this. There's even a gentleman who I guess used to be a powerful or high-ranking Freemason, who I guess discovered the society for years. And
allegedly.
Then,
this alleged Freemason.
and so all of a sudden now it goes from the society cheerleader to the biggest, most vocal, all over the place critic of the society.
You know what, Brian? I would be interested to see if there's an actual chain of custody or chain of events to where you can see proof cemented in time that this guy was involved with the lodge, and then he was involved with the society, and that this whole story wasn't retconned, cooked up in one moment. And it's not just a narrative that he's using to say, well, I was a Freemason, and then I was in the SSPX, and this is why it's bad.
So I think there are actual he's not new to this scene. This one isn't new to this scene. So there is kind of like a documented. I mean, he's been around for a while, so it's not. It's not in the moment concocted. But I don't know if anybody's seen papers, for lack of a better word, or has any way really validating all these things. I think what's interesting is. In the wake of Traditionis Custodes, you have Pachamama being enshrined, pagan gods or whatever being enshrined in St. Peter's. You have Amazon synods, and you have bishops in Germany talking about special blessings and female ordination. And all of a sudden, your life's cause, your life's mission is to discredit the society of St. Pius X.
And junk like that has been going on since John Paul II with Assisi.
Yeah.
I mean, and all people can seem to think about is why the SSPX would be the worst place to go for Mass, excluding the places that have pagan idols enshrined inside of the church, places where there's heavy metal, like in our show, being played during the Mass.
Actually in the Mass.
During the Mass.
And for the teenagers.
Yeah. I mean, obviously those places are off limits. You can't level criticism against those. Oh, but the French guy ordained a bunch of priests without express permission from Rome.
Yeah.
Therefore, you can't go there.
Well, and there's even another guy that's popped up, and I think there's a gentleman on the internet that many of us have watched before, Jeff Kastman, and he debates different folks, right? He's debated a bunch of different folks on Matt Fradd's program.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the guys he debated recently is why I'm no longer in the society. This guy, as far as I can tell, he doesn't.
I really hate those people. They're like the I was raised Catholic people. That's the equivalent within the Catholic Church of I was raised Catholic.
Well, it creates a weird kind of there is a lack of humility in tone, or it's a weird kind of thing when somebody says, well, no, I too was there once like you are. However, I have been enlightened. It's almost like a Gnostic kind of attitude. I have this special knowledge.
It's very smarmy.
Yeah, I have this special knowledge, and you don't have that. So let me tell you about my experience. And I'm not saying that anybody who wants to get an anecdotal or wants to share their testimony or however you.
I'll
phrase
share
it.
mine, Brian. I was told by my ex-girlfriend that I was in a cult. I was like, I didn't have to shave my head. There's no barbed wire around the church. Like, you come and go as you please.
It's a pretty weak cult.
I have pretty long hair. Everybody there, one of the charisms of the SSPX is that everyone is expected to dress like a 1950s IBM salesman, and that's fine. Like, if you want to do that, great, but I don't do that. And I haven't been shunned or ostracized or horsewhipped or kicked out or anything like that.
I think I've actually seen more people in jeans or just kind of without a tie at the Society Chapel than I've seen probably at the diocesan.
Yeah, you see all sorts of types.
It runs the whole range. Yeah. It absolutely. Some guys are dressed to the nines, although I think that's an expression for women usually. But the only thing that's consistent probably is that I don't think there's any women that go in there who probably aren't veiling.
The only thing that's consistent there is like belief in the real presence of the Eucharist.
Yeah, but how important is that really? I mean, is that really the most important thing? Right, I mean, yeah.
Let's not rail against the churches that have people that don't believe in the real presence of the Eucharist. Let's say that you can't go to the place where the French guy ordained the priests wrong, ordained the bishops wrong.
Yeah. Well, and so this one gentleman comes out of nowhere and back in February, and now you cannot get rid of him. He is on every show. He is writing articles at 1 Peter 5 and Catholic World Report, and he's everywhere. But my point is, where did you come from? Like where? There's even another guy that I've seen before on YouTube and on the internet who all of a sudden who has always kind of been known as a traditionalist is saying things like, those traditionalists who won't even ever set foot in a Novus Ordo church, even though we know it's valid and listed, but they won't go there because salvation for them is only in the Latin Mass. And I'm thinking this gentleman who says this, what happened? My point being that the timing on this, it is all since Traditionis Custodes. So
that is very weird.
Once Rome has kind of come out and started eliminating masses, eliminating options for the traditional mass, removing it from diocesan settings, while they've kind of reinforced some of the traditional communities that are quote unquote in full communion with Rome, there's always this kind of the Institute of Christ the King in Chicago. I think they got kind of shut down in one of their main locations, as I understand it.
Yeah.
I don't know if anything's changed on that front, but last I had heard, there was they had been shut down by Cardinal Supich in Chicago.
Wasn't there a fraternity church that they just said, like, pack it up, you're done?
Yeah, I think in
and
France.
They've been there for like 30 years.
Yeah, I think in France. That was France, but I think they got booted out in France in one of the communities. So you see these kind of this movements against some of the quote unquote in full communion traditional orders. But the interesting thing is, and even I think
communion.
Yeah, I know. As opposed to
what is partial communion?
Yeah, I don't know. It was if you're at like 65%, does that count as full, or is that I don't know. Is it like a majority communion? It's kind of nonsensical. But so my point is that with masses being shut down, communities being shut down after decades, with even the traditional orders that are in communion with their bishop being booted out after decades, why all of a sudden are these folks showing up? Twofold. Number one, to say, just remember you can't go to the society. Number two, just remember the Novus Ordo is perfectly valid and listed, although you're probably going to not maybe like what you see, but you remember you'll be with there and you're going to be in communion, full communion. And
Brian, I don't want to sound too schizoid or schizotypal, but it's not too much of a leap. I mean, they talk about St. Pius X talks about Freemasons or agents of the Freemasons. It's not too much of a leap to assume that modernist Rome, does not have agents. That there aren't anti-society factions that have agents, to include false flag people that go around and just pretend like I was a trad like you before I woke up. It's like, is that actually the case? I mean, who knows? It's not too much of a leap to assume that there's bad actors out there that are actually working and using lies, political theater, whatever the case may be, to actively discredit the society.
Yeah. And giving somebody the full benefit of the doubt and then some. I guess you could say, well, as they see the society's chapels filling up to the max because of COVID and because of Traditionis Custodes, they're sitting there going, no, folks, don't go that route. That's the dead end. That's the danger zone. That's the work construction. You have no hard hat on. Don't go over there to the construction zone. Maybe to those who have good intent, we could say, all right, they're just very worried about their fellow Catholics. But then you look at the way they're arguing it, and they're saying things like, well, they don't even have a mission in the church. They don't have any. They're suspended. They don't have. And I remember a recent conversation with someone, an argument, whatever you want to call it. But you say, but Pope Francis is letting folks go to the society for their confessions to be heard. Why would you let somebody in a diocesan setting go to I guess non-priests, non-Catholic
none of it
church?
Adds up. There's no logical consistency to these claims against the society.
You're allowed to go have your confession heard by this guy. He's a priest, but he's not. He shouldn't be there, and they shouldn't be there, and that's not really a church, and they're not really, and this isn't.
But it's okay.
But go ahead and have this talk. Tell this guy your confessions, and he can absolve you of your sins.
They're in a state of canonical irregularity, whatever that means. But you can go there for Sunday Mass. It's like, what?
I had a friend said, I've been in enough Novus Ordos to know that they're completely in a state of canonical irregularity. There's nothing regular about those masses. It's a different bag of tricks no matter where you go. Good luck finding, you can find, here's the Reverend
Let
one.
us stand and profess our faith.
Welcome to Trad Talk Radio. No, so yeah, you get that. You get that argument. And it's just kind of silly. And along with that then has been this redoubling of an effort in academia and parts of the blogosphere and the internet. There's been a redoubling of the effort to convince trads that the council had noble efforts and the implementation has been poor.
Ooh,
and the argument that we already kind of did all that in the 80s and 90s, we've already gone through all that.
And I think I know which council you're talking about too.
Oh,
it wasn't Carthage.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I say the council, and I guess I just assume everybody figured out. Is that most recent?
We all know what you're talking about.
It's the only
Vatican II.
It's the only one that matters. The only one that counts. All the other councils step aside. What did Cardinal Ratzinger or Pope Benedict called it the super council? And he wasn't saying it
he did?
Well, he was saying that there are those in a church who try to make it into a super council, and I think that's the word he used, more or less saying that there were those who were erroneously making it the council to end all councils.
That's true. I've found that Vatican II has spawned 3 different camps within the church. There's people that think that it's a church council, and I think Cassman is one of them, that it's an actual council that bears dogmatic weight.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is that it wasn't, nothing was anathematized in it, which is, as you know, that's the hallmark of a church council. That's why they meet, to anathematize things. And then, there's Camp B, second camp, that think that it was a pastoral council, which was said by Paul VI, who presided over it, and that therefore it can contain error. And then there's Camp C, people like the Diamond Brothers that are like, it was a robber council. And, I think Lefebvre actually called it a robber council. I don't know if that's the society's position, because that was brought up in the debate with Cassman and one of the Diamond Brothers, is that Lefebvre actually called it a robber council, meaning like not a real council at all. And Cassman seemed to think that it was a valid ecumenical church council.
Yeah, I don't honestly, and I'm not probably versed well enough to know if that's I don't believe the society espouses the view that it's not a legitimate council or not a valid council. Although, mind you, the church itself has gone back much later after certain councils. I'm trying to remember one, which like an example of one. I don't know if like Fourth Leon's or something like that. But there's councils in the past where they wrapped up, and then probably a few papacies later, they said that wasn't good. There's actually been a few councils. I don't want to say they've been like nullified, but more or less they've been ignored by the church. Yeah, I should probably. You know what? We could get on our Facebook page, Trad Talk Radio, on Facebook. We could see if we could maybe
Talk Radio. Eggheads unite. We want some scholars to set us straight on this.
And we could probably find something. There are a few councils I think that kind of have been conveniently forgotten because they just weren't. What was the point of it all? To the point of what you just said, though, and that's an interesting comment regarding the no anathemas and a dogmatic council. There were dogmatic constitutions, right, on the liturgy, on the church. There were dogmatic constitutions, but it never set out to declare any new doctrine or to lock any dogmatic proclamations. Like there was nothing new that was being introduced.
Yeah, that's how I've heard it from the society, is that we agree with 90% of the things from Vatican II. It's just 10% of them were ambiguous and twisted grossly out of proportion.
And I think that's kind of the argument that's been there for decades. And I'm talking about the argument from folks, including Cardinal Ratzinger. The argument being that the council didn't introduce anything new, and while it was restating accepted doctrine and dogmatic teachings of the church, it did it in such an ambiguous or intentionally ambiguous way that it was said much better before. So if the same thing was said better in the past, then maybe stick with the way it was said more clearly. There was a recent article written. This article is actually, I think, was it's titled "The Liturgy Prior to Vatican II and the Council's Reforms." It's University of Notre Dame, their Church Life Journal. So if you're on the old internet, University of Notre Dame, Notre Dame, yeah. Bulwark of
warning, ding, ding, ding.
No, but
red flags.
They are a Catholic university, aren't they, Frank? They're Catholic.
Oh yeah, it's a Catholic school.
No, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, their Church Life Journal has a series. Second of 5 articles, 2 published, 3 more to come. Second of 5 articles. The authors are John Cavadini, Mary Healy, and Thomas Wynandi. Father Wynandi is rather famous. Mary Healy teaches at Sacred Heart Seminary up in Detroit. And
where they drink sour apple Cosmotinis with maximum beans with Massimo Fascioli.
Yeah, they are kind of academia. Yeah, they are kind of academia. So this article, The Liturgy Prior to Vatican II and the Council's Reforms, it says a bunch of stuff. It's been criticized quite a bit by folks who we normally trust on this channel. And although I can't really go to the comments because I don't think there are any comments on this. They don't have any. We talked about the listening church last time, or a couple episodes ago. They don't have any comments on that you can actually.
The listening church, a crusade was called against the commenting church.
Yeah, the comm boxes were shut down. I think Traditionis Custodes actually eliminated comm boxes as well as mass in traditional masses in parish churches because nobody has a comm box anymore. But you notice at Trad Talk Radio, you can leave all the comments you want. You can email us. In fact, where can you email us out?
tradtalkradio@gmail.com.
There you go. Facebook, the website. The email, the podcasts themselves. All kinds of places you can give us comments. We're not shutting our comments on our end. But
never.
They said something in this article. To oppose the council's intent as expressed, and this they're talking specifically about the Constitution and the liturgy, to oppose the council's intent as expressed in Sacrosanctum Concilium is implicitly, if unintentionally, to fault the overarching principle of the entire council, aggiornamento.
Aggiornamento? My Portuguese is not great.
So, aggiornamento is basically bringing up to date.
Okay. So
the whole point of the council, you say to yourself, I'm sure they called the council in 1962. Well, I guess Pope John the 23rd called it like in 59 or something like that. A couple of years of preparation. But they called the council, you would say maybe, well, based on 1960. Did they call it to condemn communism? The atheistic communism? No.
Oh, no.
No. They had atheistic. Remember Archbishop Fulton Sheen?
Oh.
Archbishop Fulton Sheen, every week on his television show, was railing against atheistic communism as this great threat in the world to the Catholic Church. And we know, of course, by Bella Dodd, that atheistic communism was a great threat to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, right.
Not why they call the council. Did they call it to condemn modernism?
Certainly, Brian. That's the biggest heresy of our time.
Right? Because Pius X had written encyclicals. We know what was going on within the church. Some of these different characters like Bunini and all these guys.
Yeah.
Were they condemning Freemasonry, communism, modernism? No. According to this article and others, they called it for aggiornamento. They called the ecumenical council to say, how do we bring the church up into the modern world?
Brian, I'm saddened at hearing this. I'm shocked and saddened to hear this news.
So then they talk about opposition. Such opposition also inherently denies the validity of the council, the liturgical renewal. This argument, we talked about it before, denying the council or not supporting the council, it doesn't mean anything, because if you're not introducing any anathemas, if you're not declaring something dogmatic that hasn't already been dogmatically stated before, what are you denying?
There's nothing to deny.
What are you
or
not
criticize.
accepting?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any. Are you not accepting their pastoral approach, their aggiornamento? I think I'm allowed to say that aggiornamento went really sideways and south pretty quickly.
The whole thing is very confusing. I've said this before. I'm just baffled, 1,000% stumped by Vatican II. I have no idea what's going on there.
And as the faithful, ultimately, do we really need to understand a council? No, I mean, this isn't like some kind of democracy. Do we need to understand it? But, you still got to pass a smell test.
Yeah, you should have faith in it. It shouldn't say anything dubious or screwy or weird. I mean, Ephesus 2, the robber council, that had a lot of screwy and weird stuff in it, and it was chucked out by the clergy, declared a robber council. Thank God.
Yeah. And we don't have to wait around for this to be thrown out. But here's something. We just spent all of the 70s and 80s and 90s and all this kind of stuff, people trying to figure out how you implement the council, what it was really trying to say, what a real Vatican II Mass looks like. No,
yeah.
And of course, the Mass, the Novus Ordo, came out after the Council for the Concilium. It came out from a committee. It wasn't. You can't call it the Mass of Vatican II because it wasn't.
So didn't Bunini say that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Monsignor Cardinal Bunini.
Yes.
Didn't he say something about introducing things in ambiguous language so you could achieve? So you could leave things open. You could achieve a lot of things that would be shot down in discussion. But just leaving the door open to him through ambiguous language, you could get them done in the future, right?
Well, he may have said that. I do know for a fact that I think it was Cardinal Mueller, who had been the head of the CDF for the first few years of Francis's papacy, Cardinal Gerhard Mueller of Germany. Yeah. I believe it was Mueller who basically said that. The problem with the Second Vatican Council was all the ambiguous language.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was somebody, and it might have been Bunini from the time period who said, or it might have been actually, I wonder if it was... I'm forgetting his name. He's a French, Louis Boyer, who might have been talking about Bunini and saying that. But regardless, that's kind of the reality. So, I guess my point to kind of wrap up this whole idea of this psyops, this operation, if you will, of false flags and everything else that seems to be going on, is this twofold approach of a real renewed, almost daily posting of videos critical of the society.
Very strange.
Introducing arguments that Rome itself has never made.
Yeah.
Declaring schism where Rome itself has never declared schism.
That's the worst part, isn't it, Brian? It's like Rome doesn't say any of this stuff, but they have agents that can say it. I don't know if that's the case, but
but who knows? But it's just odd, right? That it's almost if you wanted to coordinate an effort to discredit the society in the months following Traditionis Custodes, as more people discovered the society, how would you do it any different?
Oh, you pay some chump, some sucker that writes for some loser blog.
Here you go. Try this argument out for a while.
Yeah,
say that that they have no divine mission. Say that they've never existed canonically in the church. Say that they have
I'm sure they've got some like canon lawyer whose job it is to make up this legal sophistry body of arguments against the society, and then just have nerds with blogs deploy them or like use them to argue. They've got like a team of canon lawyers somewhere.
I like when you talk about nerds with blogs as you're looking at me, because a nerd with a blog.
You are a nerd with a blog, but you're on our team.
I'm on the right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe in a couple of years I'll start arguing against the society, and then you can say, "What happened with Brian? All of a sudden he's well, back in my day when I was at the society, but I've come to realize that you're all wrong. Follow me.
I'll know what happened.
Follow me. Yeah.
I'll challenge you to a sword duel that day.
I'll be driving a really expensive car like that one guy in Goodfellas who starts buying his wife mink coats and driving a car. And they said, "Hey, Freddie, you weren't supposed to spend all the money from the robber, you idiot."
If I become an agent of the Freemasons, you won't be able to tell, but there will be signs.
There will be.
I won't tell anybody, but there will be signs.
The wife will have nicer jewelry and a better car. That'll be the tip-off, Frankie. When I'm driving a better car and the wife has better jewelry, you'll know that we've sold out. Anyway, well, on that note of not resolving anything at all, I think we should probably take a break, let folks...
That's a good idea,
I'm going to need to get my beer is looking kind of low, and this has been a lot of heady topics, so let's take a break.
My beer's been empty for like 15 seconds.
Well, then we definitely need to take a break. That's not
unacceptable.
Yeah. All right.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. are back from our break. We
Oh.
hope y'all had a great break because me and Brian's break was awesome.
Yeah.
We took the week off. We went skiing in Austria. It was super cool. Just kidding. Just kidding.
No, we actually just went to the fridge and got more beer, I think.
That's true.
You know, you talk about the society and psyops and YouTubes and Traditios Custodes and Vatican II, and you kind of end up at the fridge. Grabbing a beer or two.
You need a cold one. Relax. Don't worry. Have a cold one.
You do.
That's my advice for people that are burnt out or getting despaired or whatever.
Yeah. And I promise we're not going to go back to that now that we walked away from that topic. However, I do think there's something that we'll call it a separate topic, but it kind of builds off of that, which is something I heard another, I don't know, vlogger, YouTuber guy bring up recently. And I'm going to push back on what he contends. And I want to kind of just get, Frankie in the mix on this one. And I want to see what.
Oh, you're going to regret that. You'll rue the day.
Which reminds me, by the way, didn't we forget? We have our Too Far jar, which the listeners love. And
Brian,
I feel like
I've been remiss.
I
no money in the Too Far
no
jar.
money. So I think first of all, we do have heavy metal or whatever hard rock as our opening. So
that's right.
We probably need to throw something in there for our.
We did call out a listener when the listener called us out. We did discuss the Beach Boys and Charlie Manson.
With Charlie Manson, you know what? Hold on. With Charlie Manson,
yeah, that's two.
You got it. All right. So I think we've got it caught up now.
Oh, what else did we talk about? We talked about Jim Morrison from The Doors.
Oh.
We talked about, you mentioned Black Sabbath and AC/DC.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. We, you know what? It's a good day for the Poor Box because we were, I guess, apparently on bad behavior. Maybe too far with that first opening conversation, but
that was quite a digression.
It was.
We hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, all right. So to kind of play off of that last segment just a little bit, this vlogger, this YouTuber, this guy said that he more or less said discussing the crisis is being negative. And it kind of hit me. And it hit me kind of weird. I thought to myself,
your house is on fire. You can't just talk about your house being on fire. That's negative.
Yeah,
that's bad.
I thought to myself, it's
what a nerd.
I'm trying to figure out. You had this worldwide apostasy after the Second Vatican Council from the 70s until today. Really, you have this worldwide apostasy of a historic proportion.
Yeah,
you probably have to go back to the Protestant rebellion to get anything close to this.
Yeah,
and probably by numbers it's even less. But you have millions falling away from the faith, and you have these horrible scandals. You have all this stuff going on, and just simply report the news. The messenger is accused of being negative.
Okay, I can understand that there's levels of fixation that are useless, that are just cause people to despair. I get that. But not talking about it at all is even worse than being scrupulous about it.
Yes.
St. Alphonsus de Liguori says it's better to be scrupulous than lax. They're both errors. They'll both destroy your spiritual life. But if you got to pick one.
Yes. Well, and here's the other thing, too, which is, if you find yourself not praying your rosary, and that's going to come up later on in the show because it is October, which is the month of the Holy Rosary.
Yes.
But if you're not praying your rosary every day, if you are not practicing mental prayer, guilty, if you are not going to Mass every Sunday and other opportunities, if you are not reading something spiritual, if you're not reading, I got a book here on the table I just brought over because it was the good folks at Tan Books here in Charlotte gave me a free copy, which is always going to be a good reason to read a book. But A Tale of Death and Glory, The Acts of Saint Sebastian and His Companions by Saint Ambrose of Milan. So I think, Frank, you said before, if you're going to read a book, Saint Alphonsus de Liguori, Saint Ambrose of Milan. Yeah. I mean, when it starts
my favorite books are about saints by saints.
By saints. Yeah,
that's amazing.
And it's got an incredible monologue, if you will, by I think it's Saint Ambrose putting words maybe in Saint Sebastian's mouth, but it's a whole monologue on heaven and hell.
Ooh. That
Saint Sebastian gives to these wives of these two men who are going to be martyred, and more or less, why are you despairing that they're going to be killed in glorious martyrdom? And he really kind of chastises the family for trying to talk these two Roman citizens out of martyrdom.
Oof.
And it's really, he talks about the glory of heaven, and then he talks about just how horrible hell is.
Yeah.
And kind of to the point of the forbidden episode, I guess you're not supposed to talk about that, But
we can't talk about hell anymore.
No, we're not. We're
They
not.
said that in the Vatican II Council.
I-
I'm joking. I'm joking.
No, they didn't.
They never said that.
So the
Misquoting a church council.
Yes.
Or was it a church council?
Stop. We're running out of money for the too far jar.
Was it a pastoral council? Was it even the real church?
Oh no. Okay.
The Diamond Brothers are going to come.
Oh no. Enough of that already. Yeah. So okay. So if you're not reading your spiritual material, if you're not frequenting the sacraments, confession and Holy Communion, if you're not praying daily, if you're not praying your rosary, then yes, turn off the bad news. Maybe zone out the world for a little bit, both ecclesial and secular, and get your house in order. But for others, it is important to know what's going on. We frankly had the collapse of the faith in entire countries over the course of 3 or 4 decades, and we had scandals rip apart the faith of others because everybody was praying and obeying, and nobody was actually talking about what was going on.
Yeah.
So I firmly reject the idea that it's negative to simply discuss the crisis. I think it's a matter of what you do with that information, but to discuss it is not being negative. It's just having a conversation.
Yeah, and you know what I love about going to an SSPX chapel? I feel insulated from the crisis. I know I'm not. I know that modernism has its slimy tentacles everywhere, including society chapels, but I have to do less reading and research on what His Holiness is saying, or what the College of Cardinals is doing, or what the USCCB is doing. It matters less. It still matters.
Sure.
It's still good to know about, but there's less necessity to be scrambling over when the next Traditionis Custodes is going to come out and get my mass shut down.
Yeah.
Because the masses don't get shut down there.
Yeah. Well, and some, here's interesting. I don't want to get back on the first topic, but some call that a schismatic attitude. When you don't have to concern yourself with what Rome is doing, they view that as being a schismatic attitude. However, what I would say is, if divorce is rampant in the country, but your parents' marriage is so sound and their faith is so strong that you don't ever have to worry about your parents divorcing, that isn't being in schism with your country. That is simply having the confidence that your parents will always have your best interest at heart.
Yep.
And so when someone is in a chapel and they say, I don't worry about these things, it's because they know that the superiors and the priests have their interest at heart of saying you will always have access to these sacraments. These sacraments can never be abrogated, and you will always have access to them. And
yeah. What more could you want? I mean, like, where else would I go than a place that guarantees my access to Catholic sacraments in the original Latin rite? Like,
and doesn't try to make you feel weird, guilty, or whatever for simply asking for that, you know?
Yeah. What kind of beautiful building or like fun youth group program or anything like that could pull me away from a place that just guarantees my access to the sacraments?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
No. And actually, along those notes, the other thing, along with being called negative or being identified as negative, I heard the same individual say that being it is
Call me negative?
No. Somebody else.
Me?
Somebody no. But here's what they said though. But that being that traditionalists protesting, Catholics don't traditionally protest. Catholics do penance.
Oh.
And
yeah.
And it's interesting because, again, I would kind of say, what does that even mean? I guess penance, not protest. It sounds kind of cute and clever, and I agree, penance, not protest. But what are you calling protest? Are you talking about folks like kind of going on the freeway and blocking traffic?
Maybe they should talk to the March for Life and tell them that protest is not Catholic, and that they have to clear the streets and just stop that whole thing.
Great example. Or how about this, when people decide to do a rosary rally and simply walk 2 miles, which, by the way, for some people is very penitential.
Yeah.
Not every Catholic who goes to Mass walks 2 miles well. There are people who are old. There are people who are of bad health. There are people with bad legs, bad knees. And if they're walking 2 miles, praying a rosary, regardless of the heat, the humidity, the rain, whatever the case is, so that they can end up at a chancery holding a sign saying, please give us back our Mass. That is not protest. That is absolutely living your faith with a passion. You want to bottle that and you want to give it to the rest of the church.
Look, that guy's statement, okay, on its face, maybe accurate, but we all know what he's talking about, right?
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
Yeah. No. So again, you can label something as negative or label it as protest, but that doesn't make it negative or a protest. It's kind of just being Catholic.
Yeah, that's true.
And and we have plenty of examples of obedience has many different optics, if you will, over the years.
Yeah, the meaning of the word is mutated.
Yeah,
it's
sometimes
always changing.
Yes, it is, and also, and some saints, the way they were obedient took on different forms. Some were, calling the Pope out and telling him to get back from Avignon to Rome, and others were, doing the service ordered by a superior in their monastery or the convent,
going to the broom closet like St. John of the Cross.
Yeah, it looks different.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's kind of enough on that. I wanted to maybe wrap up this show with we were talking about this earlier, Frankie. Wrap it up with just an acknowledgement of what a great month October is in the life of the church. Great month. So every month is great. Every month, January is dedicated to the Holy Name of Jesus, which as Holy Name Society members is very special to us.
Yes.
But October is the month of the Holy Rosary.
Yes.
Yeah. And Frankie and I were very fortunate at a recent meeting of our Holy Name Society to hear a great talk by a very esteemed older Italian gentleman.
An Italian gentleman. I think most of y'all know who we're talking about. We won't mention his name.
Who
on
will
the
have
air
to come on this show here
because
soon.
the network's going to kill him.
Yeah, no,
we need him alive. He's very valuable.
He will be invited here soon. But he gave a great talk on Our Lady of Victory, also known today as Our Lady of the Rosary, and of course the whole entire Battle of Lepanto and the implications for all of Christendom.
Yes.
And talk about penance and protest and actions and words and prayers. Here it was great Saint Pius V telling the faithful to pray their rosary for victory against the Ottoman Empire, against the Turks, and at the same time commissioning the Holy League to go do battle.
Yes.
So it was two things. It was prayer and it was action, which is how our Lord works and how the saints work. So we commemorate that in October. St. Therese of Lisieux. I think on the new calendar it's the 1st. On the traditional it's the 3rd of October. I believe St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross also fall in October.
Oh, we got some great feast
So it's an
days
incredible, like
up.
the Carmelites are represented.
Amazing.
Carmelites are represented. My son, whose confirmation saint is St. Edward the Confessor.
Yes.
The only Anglo-Saxon king ever canonized by the church.
Amazing.
Reigned until 1066. Just an amazing saint, a very holy king, and which I love that. I love when you have the Blessed Carls as King St. Louis the Ninth.
Oh, yeah.
Edward the Confessor. I love when you have this royalty.
Blessed Charlemagne.
Yes.
Yes.
It speaks to, our Lord talked about how difficult it is for the rich man to get into heaven, right? And because there's just so much more to tempt you. And there's so many more worldly pleasures and servants and things that can kind of divert your attention away. Your pride maybe tells you don't need God as much. So when you have these powerful, these rich, these esteemed men, such as royalty, who are holy,
Yeah, think of the humility and purity that it takes to be an emperor, a Christian emperor. I mean, or a Christian king, or even a Christian mayor or something like that.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
City councilman, alderman, is that what they call
dog
them?
Catcher, anything, any public office that you can retain your purity, your humility, and still serve God is notable, praiseworthy.
Can you imagine that, like Saint Levon, the dog catcher?
Yeah,
Ora pro nobis.
Probably a few of them.
But you know what? Actually, that's true because there are so many saints who are never, canonized by the church. There have been, I promise you, in the history of America and the world, there have been dog catchers 50 times more holy than I am.
Oh yeah,
who are praying for the souls in purgatory and praying for us right now.
Yeah,
and we'll never know their name, but just for those kings. So Saint Edward the Confessor is another one in the month of October. I think I wanted to end by just pointing out, because Frankie and I, again, we talked about this a few episodes ago. We're both members of the Holy Name Society, which is a confraternity.
A 700-year-old Dominican confraternity.
Yes, and that word there, Dominican, and
Dominican,
come from Saint Dominic.
Saint Dominic,
and the legend. And I don't know. There are some folks who push back on this. Just like you're always going to have the folks who push back on the narrative, the legend of the church, the teachings of the church, if you will, on certain stories of the saints and certain miracles and all that. All I know is for centuries upon centuries, we have said that Saint Dominic was given the rosary by Our Lady. Counting beads, praying beads, if you will, and all these things. It's an older tradition. Those prayers weren't made up at that time, but the rosary.
Yeah, I think it was you would pray Our Fathers on each bead initially, and then Our Lady gave St. Dominic the Dominican Rosary.
Oh.
And then, I don't really know. I'm unqualified to speak on this, so I'll let you finish.
Yeah,
Brian,
no. I think that's a very good. But that's a point though, which is so St. Dominic is given indeed the Dominican Rosary, and really kind of commissioned, if you will, to share this with the rest of the church and the rest of the world. And so you think about that. I mean, what an incredible thing here in the month of Rosary that the Dominican St. Dominic would do that. And would be entrusted with that, I guess, by Our Lady. So we recall that. The other thing too would be that in about I think this was maybe 1200, 13th century.
Yeah, it was something
early
like that.
13th century. St. Dominic died about 1221, I believe. So that's when that came into be. But interestingly, about 200 years later, give or take, Blessed Alain de la Roche. And I believe Roche is rock in French. Blessed Alain de la Roche is basically further commissioned by Our Lady to really promote and promulgate devotion to the Rosary throughout the church. Another Dominican, by the way.
Nice.
Another Dominican. So what a great month. I think kind of maybe we end this show this week, Frankie, just kind of letting everybody know again to pray your Rosary. We have ours up here. I got my big old rugged rosary here with.
I love rugged rosaries.
Big old rugged rosary here. It's black beads, and it's got a big old cross on it, and then it's got a medal to Saint Anthony of Padua.
Oh yeah.
Ora pro nobis, Saint Anthony. And
pray for us.
yes, and so pray your rosary. Remember, keep an eye out for all these great feast days. And I guess how can folks get a hold of it? So we've asked for feedback on heavy metal music. You can give us feedback on the history of the Rosary or St. Dominic if we got that wrong.
Anything. I've found that the best way to get advice and help from people is not to ask for help, but to just say something that's wrong. and then people will materialize.
We should have a lot of emails
no,
then, I think.
That's wrong.
We should be getting a lot of emails and a lot of Facebook messages, right? I mean, because I'm sure we're wrong quite a bit. But
yeah, I'm going to quit asking. I'm just going to start saying things that are wrong and then accepting the correction from people that show up to inevitably say that was wrong.
That's right. So,
yep.
tradtalkradio@gmail.com. Facebook Messenger. Go to Trad Talk on Facebook. Find us on Spotify, Google, Apple, Podbean, YouTube. And any one of those forums, you could leave a comment for us as well.
YouTube comment box as well. We're not anybody until we have some serious fights and disagreements in the YouTube com box. We're promoting a martial, masculine atmosphere.
Yes.
Get out there on the internet and fight.
There you go.
Fight somebody.
That's right. That's right. And boy, I hate to say this, but if you go ahead and click a follow, please make sure you follow so you get updates on all of our new shows when they
like
post.
and subscribe.
Hit that little bell.
Ring the bell.
Ring the little bell.
There, it's out of the way. We said
all
it.
Right, we said it. All right. No. That's just for shamelessly asking for your support.
Yeah, that was too far.
All right. Well, I think we're done for this episode, Frank.
I think we're good for this episode.
All right. Well,
I'm really looking forward to the next one. We have a special guest for the next episode.
Oh, this sounds promising.
Oh, yeah. He's very special. We're not going to tell you who he is until the episode comes out.
I heard he's a little bit smarter than you and I.
Oh, he's way smarter. Probably smarter than both of us put together. But he's not too egg-headed. He's very sociable and friendly and funny. That's important.
And does he have like a real strong Italian name?
Yeah, he does.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Very nice. All right.
Yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. We're excited for it.
All right, folks.
Later.